The final thoughts that crush the avoidant before they call again. Let's talk about the moment before the avoidant ex. The one who ghosted, the one who ran, calls you again. See, what most people don't realize is this, they don't reach out when they miss you the most. They reach out when avoiding you becomes heavier than facing you. That's the shift. They've gone silent. They've scrolled. They've flirted. They've distracted themselves. They've convinced themselves you were too much, too emotional, too needy. When really, you were just present, real. But then something shifts. They sit in a room full of people and still feel alone. They laugh at a story and wish they could turn to share it. They have a win and no one's face lights up the way yours used to. And here's the true thing. It's not just that they miss you. It's that the image of you not waiting anymore is what starts to crush them. They imagine someone else texting you back. They picture you not reacting when they finally reach out. They think about you smiling, but not at them. And suddenly, the control they thought they had, gone. Avoidants aren't fearless. They're scared. Scared of intimacy, scared of themselves, scared of you seeing the messy parts of them and loving them anyway. And when they do call you again, it's not courage, it's pressure. The weight of their silence finally becoming louder than your presence ever was. So when they do reach out, don't ask, why now? Ask yourself, what standard will I hold now? Because the final thoughts that crush them are the ones where you've finally stopped waiting. Most people think that when someone reaches out after pulling away, it's because they've finally realized how much they miss you, that they've had some grand epiphany, sat with their feelings, and decided you're the one. But that's rarely how it works, especially with someone who leans avoidant. The truth is, avoidants don't call when they miss you the most. They call when avoiding you becomes more painful than confronting the feelings they've spent so long running from. There's a big difference. Avoidant individuals are emotionally overwhelmed by closeness. The moment things start to feel real, deep, or vulnerable, their instinct is to pull back. Not because they don't care, but because caring terrifies them. Intimacy brings up all the things they don't know how to deal with. Fear of abandonment, fear of being responsible for someone else's feelings, fear of losing control. So when things get intense, they disappear, they minimize, they create distance. And from the outside, it looks like they don't care. But inside, they're suppressing a storm. When they first walk away or go quiet, it might feel like a relief to them. Space gives them breathing room. Their nervous system relaxes. They distract themselves. They keep busy. They rationalize. They tell themselves they did the right thing by stepping back. They think, see, I feel calmer now. That was too much. And in that early stage, they really do believe it's better this way. But that's only the beginning. What starts to happen over time is subtle. Life goes on, but their thoughts keep drifting back. They hear a song, see something you used to laugh at, remember a moment you shared. But instead of reaching out then, they pull the feeling back in. They suppress it. They say, no, I can't go there. They stay on the run emotionally. That's still manageable for a while. But slowly, the space that once felt peaceful starts to feel heavy. The silence that brought comfort starts to echo. They begin to realize that you're not reaching out anymore. That maybe you've stopped waiting. That you might not even be thinking about them at all. And that idea, it cuts deeper than missing you ever did. It's no longer about missing what they had. It's about fearing what they've lost. Avoiding you was a form of control. It was a way to feel safe. But that control slips the moment they start to believe you've moved on. That's when the pressure builds. Not from love in the romantic Hollywood sense, but from discomfort, fear, regret, and a need to escape the very space they created. So when they finally reach out, it's not always this healthy, conscious decision. It's often because being without you hurts more than the fear of closeness did. This is why it's so important not to romanticize their return, because the moment they contact you again, it's not a symbol of clarity, it's a symptom of pressure. And that pressure only came when the avoidance stopped working. When someone with avoidant tendencies pulls away, they usually feel a sense of relief. Distance feels like safety. It gives them space from the emotional intensity they weren't equipped to handle. In those early stages of separation, their world becomes quieter. No demands for vulnerability, no expectations for connection, no uncomfortable conversations that push them toward emotional intimacy. That space allows them to feel like they've regained control. They might even convince themselves that disconnecting was the right move, that maybe things were getting too complicated, too emotional, too much. But what starts off feeling like peace slowly becomes something else entirely. At first, they're able to distract themselves. They throw themselves into work, into social events, hobbies, or new flings. They might even talk about how free they feel. To them, those initial days or weeks of space feel validating, like they've escaped something that was suffocating. But that feeling is shallow, and it doesn't last. Because over time, they begin to notice something's missing, and not just in the background noise of their life, but in the depth of their experience. The distractions don't fill the space the way they hoped they would. The silence they once welcomed begins to stretch into loneliness. It doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in. They might pass places that remind them of you, or hear someone say something you used to say. It might be a holiday, a bad day, a good day, any moment where they feel the absence of connection. These are the cracks where memory slips in. And the truth is, they don't immediately pick up the phone in those moments. Their reflex is still to suppress, to push it down, to tell themselves it's not a big deal, that it's just nostalgia or weakness or whatever story helps them stay distant. But slowly, the weight of that silence begins to grow. The reason the silence gets heavier is because it becomes undeniable. It's not just about them missing you. It's about them noticing that you're not missing them, at least not in a visible way. You're not reaching out. You're not posting cryptic messages or chasing their attention. You've stopped reacting. And that's when the panic begins to creep in. Because now, the space they created is no longer a break. It's a gap that feels irreversible. This is where the silence, which once felt like control, starts to turn against them. They imagined they could leave the door open, that they could come back on their terms. But now they begin to wonder if you've locked the door behind them. The very distance they chose becomes a source of fear, not freedom. They start to ask themselves questions they've been avoiding. What if I was wrong? What if they've moved on? What if I can't get back in? So when they do reach out, it's often not from clarity or emotional maturity. It's because the reality of life without you, and the weight of the silence they once depended on, has finally become louder than the noise they used to hide behind. What truly begins to disturb the avoidant isn't just the memories of you or the occasional pangs of missing you. It's the image in their mind of you no longer waiting. That thought doesn't show up immediately. In the beginning, they assume you'll always be there. Avoidants often carry a quiet confidence that they can come back whenever they feel ready, and that you'll be exactly where they left you, open, receptive, maybe even a little hurt, but still available. It's this assumption that gives them the false security to walk away in the first place. They rely on your attachment to buffer their detachment. But over time, that image begins to shift. At first, it's subtle. Maybe they notice you're not watching their stories anymore. Maybe your texts have stopped completely. Maybe mutual friends mention your name less. Or they hear you've been going out, smiling, laughing, without them. And that's when something starts to unravel in their mind. Not because they've suddenly become emotionally evolved, but because they can't shake the possibility that you're okay now, that you've recalibrated your life without them, that they're no longer at the center of your thoughts. They imagined that stepping away would keep them in control, but they didn't anticipate what it would feel like to be out of your emotional orbit. That's a very specific kind of fear. It's not just about missing what was. It's about the realization that someone else could now be doing what they used to do, texting you good morning, making you laugh, seeing sides of you that used to be just theirs. They picture someone else getting your best, your softness, your affection, and most painfully, your attention. That image is crushing. Avoidants thrive on distance because it allows them to avoid the messiness of emotional exposure. But that same distance becomes their undoing when it starts to challenge their sense of importance in your life. They don't want to be close, but they also don't want to be forgotten. They want the illusion of access without the responsibility of connection. And when that illusion starts to crumble, when they sense they might have genuinely lost you, the emotional stakes rise fast. That's when the what-ifs start creeping in. What if you've stopped loving them? What if someone else is doing what they couldn't? What if you've finally healed enough not to need them at all? Those thoughts don't just sting, they threaten the identity they held in the relationship. You were once their emotional safety net, whether they admitted it or not. But now, they fear they've become irrelevant. This fear isn't romantic, it's reactive. It's driven by the potential loss of power, presence, and emotional comfort. And that fear begins to eat away at the emotional wall they built between you. They start questioning whether disappearing was worth it, not necessarily because they've grown, but because the thought of being replaced, forgotten, or moved past becomes more painful than the vulnerability they once ran from. Avoidant behavior is so often misunderstood. From the outside, it can look cold, calculated, or even cruel. But avoidance isn't rooted in power, it's rooted in fear. It doesn't come from a place of emotional strength or clarity, but from deep discomfort with vulnerability, closeness, and the potential of being truly seen. People who operate from an avoidant attachment style aren't fearless. They're often some of the most emotionally overwhelmed individuals in the room. They've just learned to protect themselves by staying distant. Avoidants are not wired to lean into discomfort the way securely attached people are. When something feels emotionally intense, whether it's love, conflict, intimacy, or even just someone genuinely caring for them, their instincts scream for space. Not because they don't want love, but because love brings unpredictability, pressure, and a feeling of exposure. To let someone in is to lose control, and for avoidance, control is everything. It's the illusion of safety. When someone gets too close, it triggers a kind of emotional claustrophobia. Even if they like you, care about you, or even love you, the closeness can feel like a trap. Much of this comes from past experiences, whether it's emotional neglect, inconsistency in caregivers, or early relationships that taught them people aren't safe, that love equals pressure, or that vulnerability leads to pain. Over time, they build a defense system: stay independent, stay self-contained, don't rely on anyone too much, and don't let anyone rely too much on you. That system works until it doesn't, because intimacy is a core human need. You can't suppress that forever without it taking a toll. The irony is that avoidants often want love just as much as anyone else. They want connection. They want to be seen and known, but they want it without the discomfort, without the fear, without the emotional exposure. And that's not how real relationships work. So what happens is a pattern: they get close, start to feel something real, panic, and pull back. Then they feel the loss and come back, but only until the fear returns again. It's a cycle, not because they're manipulative, but because they're conflicted. Their heart wants connection, but their nervous system sees it as a threat. This is why avoidants often appear hot and cold. One day, they're all in, affectionate, attentive, emotionally available. The next, they're distant, distracted, or emotionally shut down. They're not playing games. They're emotionally dysregulated and trying to protect themselves the only way they know how: by retreating. What's important to understand is that avoidance is not a personality flaw, it's a coping mechanism. But it's one that deeply affects the people they get close to. And until they become aware of that pattern and choose to do the work to break it, they will keep running from the very thing they crave: intimacy. They are not fearless. They are afraid of being dependent, of being needed, of being truly open. And when they feel those fears rising, they don't talk through them. They disappear, because disappearing feels safer than staying and being vulnerable. When the avoidant finally reaches out after weeks or months of silence, it's easy to believe it's a turning point. That maybe they've had time to reflect, to grow, to realize what they lost. It's tempting to read their return as a sign that love has conquered fear, that they're finally ready to step up and be the person you needed all along. But here's the hard truth: their return isn't always a breakthrough. It's often a test, not of your loyalty, but of your standards. Their message, their call, their sudden interest is not a reward for your patience. It's an opportunity for you to decide who you are now. See, avoidants often come back not when they've changed, but when they feel the shift in your energy. When you were emotionally available, waiting, checking in, trying to understand them, they felt in control. They had the power of space, and you were the one managing the emotional labor of the connection. But when you stop, when your silence replaces theirs, when your attention pulls inward instead of toward them, they feel it. Even if they don't fully understand it, they sense that something is different, that they've lost their grip on the emotional dynamic. And that loss of emotional control is what pulls them back in. They don't always return because they're ready to invest. Often they come back because they want to know that they still could if they wanted to. It's a form of emotional reassurance. They need to feel that the door is still open, that you're still emotionally within reach. Because if you are, then they can keep their distance without truly losing you. They get the comfort of knowing you're there, without the discomfort of actually doing the work to stay. This is why your response matters so much. When they come back, it's not the moment to get swept up in nostalgia or hope. It's the moment to get clear about your standards, about what you will and won't tolerate anymore. It's a chance to show, not tell, not that you've grown too, that their absence wasn't a pause in your life. It was a chapter that ended. And if they want to start a new one, it doesn't begin where they left off. Too many people treat an avoidance return like a chance at the love story they hoped for. But in truth, it's often a mirror reflecting how far you've come. If you meet them with the same emotional availability you once gave freely, without boundaries, you'll likely find yourself back in the same cycle. But if you meet them with clarity, self-respect, and a commitment to your own emotional well-being, the entire dynamic shifts. They either rise to meet your standards, or they realize they can't access you the way they once did. So when about you not? So when they reach out, focus on what it means about them. Focus on what it says about you now. This isn't about not. That moment is your test, to show whether you've healed from the version of yourself that tolerated uncertainty and called it love. Thank you for sharing this space, for reflecting, for listening not just with your ears, but with your heart. If you saw yourself in these words, know this: you're not alone, and you're not broken. You're just learning what real love feels like when it's no longer built on fear or one-side effort. Keep raising your standards, not to push people away, but to make room for someone who's emotionally ready to meet you there. Take care of yourself, protect your peace, And never forget, the closure you're waiting for from them might just be the decision you make without them. Until next time, be bold, be kind to yourself, and above all, keep choosing you. Thank you.